Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Hello, welcome back. You're listening to The Blockchain Show. I'm your host, Ethan Kinderconnect, and this is episode 199. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Nick Saponaro, co-founder and CIO at the decentralized payment ecosystem, Divi Project. Nick, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you here. Before we get into anything, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and how blockchain ties in with your work?
Of course. Yeah, so I got into blockchain. Well, really, I heard about it like many others way before I got into it. I was actually building computers for a living at the time and built a couple of Bitcoin miners. That was the first like real introduction I've had to it. And, throughout the years, I've had buddies tap me on it and, ask, hey, have you heard about this Bitcoin thing? And, this was many, many years ago. I didn't have money to invest regardless of, of my interest at that time. It wasn't until about the end of 2014, early 2015 that I got into crypto as an investor, made my first purchase of Bitcoin and ultimately Ethereum. And that led me down a wondrous rabbit hole of discovery, both in terms of really initially the investment opportunity, but later on, and ultimately the technological opportunities that come along with blockchain and the various use cases that come from the various blockchains. In 2017, was basically freelancing, doing a lot of web development. That's my background. I'm a software developer. And I was brought into the Divi Project as a freelance web developer by a friend of mine who had kind of just gotten into the industry and was like, hey, man, I know you've been investing in this stuff for a couple of years and you've been reading about it. We need a website built. Maybe you can help us out with, developing the company. And so I did. And initially I thought it would just be, just another freelance gig and I'd move on. But I was really interested in the philosophy behind this project, which is building an ecosystem of finance that's accessible and easy to use, because my experience with crypto was that it was very difficult to use, complex, overly jargon heavy, and really not accessible to the everyday person. So that was a philosophy I could get behind, and that's really what I've been dedicated to for the past almost 4 years now.
Yeah, man, that's great. I can definitely relate to the lacking user friendliness of crypto. Even in some cases now, my fiance, I'm sure people are tired of hearing about this, but we used to get donations to the podcast, and she lost keys to her wallet in like 2017, and it's just gone. She's really upset that she probably would have had, I don't know, probably thousands of dollars by now. But anyways, man, I like to hear people's stories. So thank you for sharing that with me. I know you mentioned that you're doing some web design, and would you say that you transitioned to the role at CIO, or tell me a little bit more about how that process came about?
Yeah, I had a lot of experience working in development teams, but I didn't have a lot of necessarily business experience. I had a couple startups that didn't do so hot before we started Divi. So, initially I was really just focused on building the technology. We had a really small team in the beginning. We didn't have a huge ICO or anything. We only raised about 2.1 million in our ICO. And, while that sounds like a lot of money, some of our competitors were raising 40, 50, 100 million. So we were really bootstrapping a lot of what we were doing in the beginning. And as such, we were working with a bootstrap team. There was about 2 other devs working with me, building basically everything. But over time, as the project grew and as we achieved more success in the market, we were able to bring on more developers. And just, it was pretty natural transition. I led the development for a while as a lead full stack dev. And then as the team grew more and more, I'm one of the few people in the project who has been there from day one and who has both the technical knowledge as well as sort of the everyday knowledge and can bridge that gap. And so it seemed like a natural step for me to take on the role of CIO. And that's basically what I do. I take the technology and boil it down for the outside world to understand, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it looks excellent. I mean, something that I'm really passionate about is how to earn any kind of cryptocurrencies, especially someone who's starting out, someone who's maybe doesn't come from a lot of like a privileged background, and they want to start building some wealth to hand on to their families. I was looking, and it seems like people can earn with Divi. Can you maybe tell me a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, the most important thing for us when we first started was making earning the easiest possible thing in the ecosystem. Of course, we have expanded beyond that ever since, but we've felt and still feel today that the main thing that attracts people to crypto, whether we like it or not, is the financial aspect of it. It's what initially attracted me and what attracts, I would say, a majority of people. A lot of us do get into the technology afterwards, but that's not necessarily what draws you to it. So we developed the first and still basically only genuinely one-click masternode. And masternodes were a big deal back in 2017, 2018. They're essentially an alternative to mining. You don't need expensive hardware. You don't need really as much energy consumption or any of the sort of caveats and pitfalls that come with mining. All you need is enough coins. But they were really difficult to set up. I mean, beyond difficult, you had to have a background in technology, basically. And even then, it was an arduous task. So what we did was we created this one-click masternode. And that has really enabled us to build our network in a way that most coins don't have the ability to at this early of a stage, where we have over 53% of our coins in masternodes. Creates a very secure ecosystem. We also have staking. So with as little as 10,000 Divi, you can stake just by leaving the computer running and the program running. It's really as simple as pressing one button. So that was, again, our primary focus. We thought if we can make this really difficult thing easy and attract people to this earnings opportunity, that will give us enough leeway and room to build all the fundamental aspects of this project that will make it a long standing viable project in the space. And that's basically what has happened. There's, of course, it's not a straight path. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but that's basically where we are today. And we have over 1,800 masternodes running at various levels. So we have 5 different, we call them tiers of masternodes. And this, again, is just a way for more and more people to access this technology, because we saw with like Dash, for example, which is also a masternode coin, very, very expensive to get a Dash masternode right now. Even where it is in price today, it's inaccessible to the average person. I think it's like $750,000, something like that, 500 grand. Too much for a mainstream investor. So we created 5 tiers to allow for those lower barriers to entry to exist, and to just have, again, more longevity as far as being able to pull more people into the project.
Wow, man. Impressive. So are we talking staking a token to set up a masternode, or am I wrong there?
Yeah, so there's 2 ends of it. Staking are what we call basically the validators. They add new blocks to the blockchain. They validate the transactions. They're essentially the miners in the ecosystem, and they're super easy to set up. You just need to have at least 10,000 coins in your wallet, and you just click the button and you're on. Masternodes serve a different purpose, where they really are verifying transactions in the network and ensuring that the consensus of all of the peers, all of the computers that are running our program, are not bad actors, let's say. And it's they can be leveraged for other things. Like in Dash, they're leveraged for private transactions. And I think some others are using them for pseudo VPN networks, decentralized storage, things like that. So they're very powerful nodes, very powerful machines, but they do serve a different purpose in staking.
All right. So if somebody wanted to get involved, would they go to your website and download a wallet, or is this something that's available on like iOS and Android?
It's a great time to chat with you, actually, because as of right now, you can go to the iOS App Store and pre-order the mobile wallet that'll be coming out within the next few days, basically. And same with Android. It's just not available for pre-order there. And this will enable you to actually set up a masternode right from your phone. as well as store Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and of course Divi. And in the coming months, a lot of really amazing features like bank accounts, debit cards, and things like that will come through. So yeah, you can definitely go pre-order that, or you can download our desktop wallet, which has been available for a couple of years.
That's excellent. And so I've got, an old laptop, some old phones. Is this something that would be sufficient to run a Masternode, or does it have to be something a little more current?
No, it really doesn't need to be, an intense setup. That was a big reason that I think Masternodes and staking became so popular, and why especially staking has stayed so popular. You're leaving a much smaller ecological footprint, as well as the fact that you might have a computer in your house that will work for it right now. As long as you have, we recommend 2 gigs of RAM and about 20 gigs of hard drive space, you should be off to the races in no time.
Oh man, I got 2 laptops that qualify for that. That's kind of exciting, man.
There you go.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we've done the podcast for like 5 years, and I spent so much time just working on the podcast that I kind of overlooked all of these opportunities that I really wish I just would have, taken an extra hour each day after editing and posting. And, it's actually a lot of work to do a podcast. I don't think people realize it, but
yeah.
The cool thing is like some people who've listened have reached out to me and said, hey, this and this, such and such episode, I took your advice, and now, I have this huge portfolio. Thank you. And I'm like, damn it, I should have taken my own advice. But anyways, man,
that's awesome though.
Yeah. It's cool. It's turned out to be a show for people who are kind of getting into the space. Ever since my co-host Steve kind of stepped back a little bit, it's fallen on my shoulders, and I'm not nearly as technically, I don't know. He's like a master in this space. I was more the the audio guy, but along the journey, a lot of people have kind of taken on this kind of learning process with me, which is pretty cool.
That's really cool. And we need more of that in the space. I think education and sort of light touches, accessible touches with the community or the crypto curious are really important. And we're starting to see a lot more of that mainstream interest. I don't know if we're seeing a ton of mainstream adoption yet, but definitely a lot more interest recently, thanks to people like yourself running these types of podcasts, thanks to apps that make it easier to invest. You have Robinhood out there and stuff like that now, and they have their own caveats too, of course, but I think it's a great thing. Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of that going on, and I'm always curious how that works on the back end. These different exchanges, they must have like thousands or millions of wallets, and they're just kind of making things work behind the scenes. And I always wonder, it's almost impossible for me to comprehend. But at the end of the day, it's really like, does it work? Is something that I can use? And it's exciting that there's projects like Divi out there and some of these others that you mentioned that are actually working to make it less, cryptic for the user and more functional, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's definitely important. I think it's also important to note that a lot of these apps don't really adhere to the tenets that crypto was built upon. And I don't necessarily need to name drop competitors or anything, but you have a lot of popular applications out there that are what we call centralized services that essentially act like banks, where you put your money in or you put your crypto in. And like you said, they have thousands of wallets, but they're really combining everyone's funds, and they're really literally taking custody of your money, which to me is kind of antithetical to what crypto was made for. Satoshi's vision was really to create a decentralized peer-to-peer cash system, which of course we didn't see that necessarily come to fruition with Bitcoin, but you do see it a little bit more so with some of the other more transactional blockchains. Apps that don't adhere to that at least primary fundamental tenet of decentralization, of key ownership, where you actually, like your fiance, she ran into an unfortunate situation where she lost her private key or her seed phrase. It sucks, but in reality, that is how crypto was built. If you are willing to give up your ownership of your money, then we're just going back to the same system that we already had, which is, the central banks, the exchanges that, utilize and hold your money. I was reading an article this morning about rehypothecation, which is when banks take your collateral and re-lend it to other people. It's a dangerous game. And it really, again, is kind of at odds with what crypto is meant to be. And that's why, my philosophy and the philosophy of Divi has always been your keys, your coins. We'll never take custody of your money.
Yeah, that's really, really good that you brought that up. It's something I've struggled with here in the last few months because, like you said, if you don't own the keys, do you really own the cryptocurrency? And I understand for a lot of people that that's kind of a barrier, but at the end of the day, it's like, do I want to help support a system that's really, it just doesn't really have my best interests when it comes down to it. They're becoming a corporation and like you said, like basically a new central bank. So I kind of struggle with that because, like, with my fiance, she really wanted to get into crypto, and I was like, well, okay, let's do it right this time. And I tried to help her, like, set up another wallet and back things up, and she's like, is there like something else? I'm like, well, yeah, there's like other places now you can go to that you just need a username and a password. But I told her, you're not going to actually own it. They're going to own it technically. I mean, yeah, it's kind of like one of those fundamental questions. I was like, well, I guess that's exactly what you're solving. So I guess that answers my question. How do we bring ownership of cryptocurrency and the ease of use to people? So
yeah, that's the key. You really need to, a lot of it comes down to onboarding, honestly. Getting the person into the ecosystem first, giving them a familiar experience that they can relate to, that they've done before. That's step one. Once they're in, then you can start to nudge them towards some of the more educational aspects, like backing up your seed phrase, protecting your wallet with 2FA and things like that. Being bombarded with all of that when you first onboard to an app is really daunting. And like you saw with your fiance, kind of a turnoff. The market will decide which way this goes. And if the decentralized apps don't make it easier soon, then the market will just shift to the centralized ones, which do have those kinds of experiences. You look at BSC, right? Binance Smart Chain. It's basically a clone of Ethereum. Ethereum ultimately has higher rate of developer and probably overall adoption, but it's plagued with these, high gas fees, which are starting to come down. It's plagued with, network congestion and things like that, things that decentralized blockchain networks suffer from at scale. Whereas BSC, which is a lot more centralized, is faster. The fees are next to nothing. But it really, again, is antithetical to what crypto was meant to be. Does it matter to the general market? Absolutely not. All they care about is how accessible it is to them and how easy it is and how much money they can make. So if it's easier to make money over here, they're going to go over there. That is a concern that keeps me up at night, because if BSC wins, then decentralization basically loses. Ethereum is one of the most remarkable pieces of technology basically ever created. And I believe that the issues will be resolved over time, but the market's moving fast, and people like myself are probably more of a minority where you have a lot more people who are really just trying to jump in, jump out and make their money.
Right. Yeah. I think for a lot of those folks, they're fine with some of the other, like username, password type exchanges or whatever you want to call them, because really they're just treating it like stocks, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Which, I guess it's important because they're getting involved. They're providing capital. I don't know how else to say that, but it's always been more interesting to me is the utility of a lot of the tokens. And I've got like over a dozen different wallets that I'm constantly going through each day, just kind of keeping an eye on things. And I had the thought, maybe I should just focus on one, or maybe that's Divi. I don't know. But is it a good thing to have diversification and that sort of thing? Or that's why I've been interested in the Foundation for Interwallet Operability, and that's been fun to follow. And
They're doing awesome work over there. We're friends with one of the guys that runs that project. You're right. I mean, I bet a lot of people are coming to that conclusion. Like, I'm so annoyed with all of this piecemeal, you know, coin ownership all over the place. I mean, you have no idea how many times I've opened like an old wallet or an old exchange account. And I'm like, oh my God, like I had a couple grand in here or something. But that is why our focus is so heavily on the multi-coin future. I don't believe that, I mean, each blockchain is created for a certain reason. Some are obviously just random money grabs, but Bitcoin has a different use case than Ethereum, and Ethereum has a different use case than Divi, and it trickles down and down and down. And you have all of these ancillary products as well that shoot off from the various blockchains. The concept of, we call it maximalism, the concept that there can only be a single coin is absurd. That's like saying there can only be a single car manufacturer. People want choice, and there's a different, I'm not going to load my sedan with rocks and gravel. That's why trucks exist, right? Same with blockchains. You need a different blockchain for different various purposes. So I think that FIO is awesome, or FIO. What they're doing is an important step towards that interoperability. What we're building is, again, a multi-coin wallet. Will ultimately, I'm sure, integrate FIO and bridge those gaps. And hopefully, my goal is one day you only need one crypto app on your phone. That's Divi. That's my dream. But it doesn't matter if it's Divi or another. At some point, we have to consolidate all this stuff, and it has to become interoperable, especially if you want to see it used in commerce. Because if I go, just like when you go overseas, right? If you've ever been to Europe, you exchange your money for euros, you lose a little bit of money on the exchange rate, and you have to use euros while you're there. You exchange back out when you leave. That is a lot of friction. Crypto can solve that friction as long as everything is interoperable. Imagine going into a shop and they accept Litecoin, but you only have Bitcoin. And the wallet just converts it for you. No one knows the difference. No one cares that blockchain was in the background or what have you. But it's this incredible technology that's facilitating it. That's the future I see. It's a ways out, obviously, but that's what I'm working towards.
Yeah, man. I think you're really, you're hitting the nail on the head. This is something I've been looking for quite a while now. And, it's just really, really great that I get to talk to you today and share this with our audience. These podcasts always fly by, but there was something I really wanted to bring up, and you kind of mentioned it a little bit when we were talking about, like Robinhood and PayPal and those kind of things getting into crypto. Is the whole cryptocurrency blockchain space, for lack of a better term, is it at risk from a corporate takeover? Because how many times have we seen great things just get, taken over?
Yeah.
Thinking of Coachella and stuff like that, sponsored by Pepsi, and it just becomes like a huge money grab, and it kind of sucks the soul out of it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that are we heading down that road, or maybe you can just expand a little bit upon what you're talking about earlier about onboarding people and the fear of them going towards more of that corporate model than Satoshi's original vision? Yeah,
it's definitely a concern. We live in, right now, a meme-driven, hype-driven market. And that could be said of stocks and crypto, and even real estate to an extent. Pretty much all financial markets are undergoing the same sort of irrationality at the moment. But we're also, for the first time, seeing in crypto specifically, these large institutional investors coming in with billions of dollars. We've seen Tesla purchase over $1 billion worth. Huge institutions who in the past have been abhorrently against crypto, like JP Morgan and stuff, coming in and buying tons of crypto. A lot of people feel that it's a hedge against the volatility of the dollar. We've seen a lot of printing money over the past couple of years, especially with the pandemic. We're already trillions of dollars in debt as a nation in the United States. And a lot of people are worried about that. So crypto is a great hedge. It's a great mitigation of that risk. But this monumental experience that we all are experiencing together with all of these huge numbers coming in is not without its own set of risks, right? And like you said, you have now a new, basically nascent market that's underregulated. The regulations are starting to become more clear, but there's still a lot of loopholes and gray areas. And you have these huge institutions that are already manipulating financial markets, as we saw with GME and AMC back a couple months ago, where Wall Street Bets, incited a massive rally in the GameStop stock and eventually AMC, which was an awesome initiative to expose how manipulated these things are. I mean, Robinhood was able to shut off trading altogether. You could not trade GME stock. That is the danger of centralization. The more we centralize crypto, the more at risk of that same behavior we become. You see big influencers talking about Doge and pumping it up like crazy. Doge has no fundamental basis to be worth 60 cents. It's the top 4 cryptocurrency on earth today. And anybody who's been in the crypto space for a long time can tell you that how much of a joke that is. But it says a lot about what's happening. We are driven by hype. We're not reading. We're not we're not doing our own research. And maybe the market will decide that ultimately that doesn't matter. Maybe they'll decide that, all that matters is consensus of how much we decide something is worth, as we are with Doge. But historically, that's not what happens. Historically, this ends badly for retail investors. Because people got to remember, no matter how much money JP Morgan or Tesla or whoever else comes in and decides to put money into crypto, no matter how much money they put in, their game isn't necessarily making the number go up indefinitely. Their game is to make money. And when they see that opportunity, whose money are they going to take? The people who are blindly investing in things that they don't understand. That's my concern, really. The corporate takeover stuff will happen regardless because they just have that much, they just have that many resources. But we still can retain control of the fundaments. The base level of crypto can stay true to itself if we adhere to the education that we've been offered. I mean, this is a gift, in my opinion, crypto. Satoshi gave the world probably the most massive gift that has ever been given, a way to redistribute wealth to literally everyone, everywhere. I just hope that we don't squander it.
Yeah, same here, man. It's really seems like a critical time, and what's preventing us is just unity. I think corporations have the advantage of having a consolidation of power. Legally, I think they're classified as a person, but in reality, it's huge groups of people working together towards a central goal, and they just become these like money-hungry, greedy machines. And it would be wonderful if we could see more of the kind of the grassroots movement that we saw around the GME, Wall Street Bets, in the crypto world. But it just seems like we're kind of fragmented all throughout the internet. And, there's things like podcasts and blogs and, back when we could go and be around each other more, there was events. I used to like to go to those. Hopefully that's happening again. But yeah, man, I can't agree with you more. I think it's, on one hand, it's like the credibility that everyone in the space has been wanting for years is starting to happen. But on the other hand, we're at risk of losing a lot of people to corporate interests.
Yeah.
And it's weird to see this shift because you used to see all those hit pieces in like the, Financial Times or the Wall Street Journal about how Bitcoin was just, garbage essentially. And then a few years later, like you said, JP Morgan coming out with their own blockchains and buying up stuff. And so I don't really know how to feel about it. I just hope that people who are listening just take the time to do the little bit of work, like you said, do the reading and just get involved down at, owning your stuff instead of giving away your power to other people. So
it's worth the effort. It is worth the effort. I can promise you. But we'll see. And I hope that to some small extent, the technology that we contribute to this space will lead more people down the right path, or what I would consider the right path. But the market ultimately will always decide.
Yeah. Well, hopefully a lot of people listening will take this to heart. I know since we've been talking, I've already signed up for the waiting list. I've got the desktop client downloading in the background.
Nice.
So I'm definitely pumped to get started. It's just amazing. Like, I'm always reading about this stuff, and there's a project like yours that just somehow slips through the cracks. So I'm grateful that we were connected today, that I can share this with at least our audience.
I'm really grateful that you were able to have us on. I can't thank you enough.
My pleasure. If there's anything you'd like to leave us with, definitely tell people where they can go for the downloads, ways to connect and that sort of thing.
Definitely. You guys definitely check out diviproject.org. The wallet is available for pre-order on iOS. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, all over social media. The handle's just @Divi Project, DIVI Project. We're a very active community. We are happy to answer any and all questions. We have 24-hour support. So yeah, please come join us and make some new friends.